And I remember back then, the phone that I was getting the most views from was obviously the iPhone, but also the Samsung Galaxy. The S4 was a really good phone. I remember the S5 wasn't as good, but I remember the S4 was like what changed the channel. Spent all my money in my bank account on that thing.
That was probably the best phone. That was right when that came out is right when I started T-Booth, and that was one of the hottest sellers. Hotter than
4K video,
iPhone.
like one of the first phones that could shoot 4K, had an amazing camera. The saturation was all there. The screens were also like way ahead of their time. And
I was selling S4s when the S6 was out.
Really?
That's how good they were of a phone.
Because the S5 kind of turned people off a little bit. Remember, it was a much uglier phone than the S4. But I remember...
Yeah, that was a bit of a quiet one. The S6 came out and more people went towards that. But yeah.
The S5 had the water resistance and it had a flap. Well. It had like that weird little flap and the perforation on the back.
Oh yeah, where you could peel it off the back, yeah. People did like the SD card ability though, to be able to put in your own type of memory. That was a big selling point for the Samsungs and has been. So
back then it was like, people would always say like Apple felt like they were a bit behind. They were a little bit late to 4K video, the dual camera setup and the larger phones. So back then was like, I think the golden era of smartphones where I was not getting access to any phones because I was still a small channel, have to buy everything. And so each phone that came was much more special. I would make like 20 videos of each one just to be able to pay it off. And luckily, one after another, they paid each other off, bought the new iPhone. And 1 year also lined up outside the Apple store in Vancouver for 27 hours. And that was the last time I lined up for anything.
My God, over a day?
Yeah.
What did you do?
Inside the mall.
Wow, nice. You had a guy hold your spot or something?
Yeah, I went with a friend.
Nice.
It was
Tag buddy.
It was terrible. Wouldn't suggest doing that ever again. But yeah, that's another story for another day. But yeah, back then the hype for phones was massive. Like people would line up for iPhones like all the time. And I don't know if Best Buy had like huge lines in Victoria, but I remember Victoria used to only get a couple units at a time, but there was just like that huge hype for it. Whereas now you can order online.
I think at that point, man, people were really innovating. Like iPhone was very still new to the market. Like they took a product that we already loved in the iPod and made it a phone, and that was really what like alchemized the entire process of the competitive market. And iPhone was continually coming out with groundbreaking innovation every time they came out with a new phone. Exactly.
Specs wise, they were still behind. Like Samsung was very ruthless,
but they're still
about
easy
that.
to use, and that was what people really enjoyed about iPhone. They had iMessage, which just created this like cult following.
Same with the App Store. They really made that ecosystem back then. And then they were a little bit late to specs, which usually seems like the easy part. I mean, Samsung was like throwing in spec after spec after spec. And now brands have kind of dialed back on it. We're back to like lower resolution cameras aside from the S20. But do you remember at that time, HTC was also killing it. They were one of the first phones that had metal. They had the Beats audio collaboration. Yeah. That phone was so beautiful. It was like well machined. And for a few models, they did a great job. And then LG came in and also did a great job with their LG G4. It was just like a solid thin
really
bezel
hot seller
phone
as well.
Yeah, and I heard LG was popular up until the past couple of years, but like all these companies back then were like, those are the ones that come to mind. It was Samsung was selling crazy amounts of units in Asia. iPhone was also doing pretty well, but innovation wise, I think HTC changed the game for like phone build quality. And even though now they're like extinct, I don't really know how they ended up there, but yeah, it's weird how it's all like shifted, and I think it makes sense. Back then, BlackBerry was kind of on the way out.
I started after BlackBerry. And BlackBerry, I sold I think maybe 2 BlackBerries.
Did you have
that
a
was
BlackBerry?
when the big BlackBerry came out. The BlackBerry Curve. No,
the Bold and the Curve. I think was the touchscreen one.
That was the one. Yeah,
the touchscreen one failed pretty badly.
It failed bad. There was a lot of hype. We got marketing promotions about it, about how we were going to push it, and there was maybe one guy that came in asking about it, and that was it. And he never even came back.
But the BlackBerry guys, they want a BlackBerry. They're not switching, right? Like the really loyal ones.
They were known as discreet and cryptive, and but so are iPhones. There's privacy laws against that sort of stuff now.
But the new BlackBerries, like in the past couple of years, had actually made a pretty good comeback. Like some of them had the same camera as a Google Pixel, but there just wasn't a demand for that kind of, like once you switch out of a physical keyboard, you get used to it and you don't come back anymore. So yeah, I think it was interesting to see how the industry has really shifted. I wasn't really around for the early part. I never had like a Motorola Razr. I never had a BlackBerry. My first phone was like a flip phone. But I remember, the iPhone was the way the market was back then. Like I was so excited for like an HTC phone and all that. So yeah, what was the best selling phone at around the time you were working at Best Buy?
So Best Buy was 2016. And it was always going to be the iPhone. Like,
Yeah.
what was the iPhone in 2016? Was it the 7?
the iPhone. I'm trying to think. So I graduated in 2015.
I think it was like the
It must have been the 7 or it might have been the
7
8.
Plus?
It might have been the 10 and the 8.
No, I was selling 7 Pluses, I think.
So that was 2016.
That was, yeah.
Or it might have been, no, it's 2015. 2014 is when I lined up for the iPhone.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I really felt then, like that was, iPhone was the number one seller, but Samsung was just there. It was probably 50-50. And I found that iPhone was still trying to figure out how big they were going to make a phone.
Yeah.
They kept going bigger and bigger and bigger, and everyone
Plus
kept wanting
sold
bigger,
like
bigger,
crazy
bigger.
though. The gold, remember the Gold Plus was going for thousands of dollars.
It was so hard
People
to get.
line up a week
Yeah.
for that thing. Like I remember the store I was lining up at only had, I think 1 or 2, and you could have got one a week if you really wanted to wait a week later. But they were all like shipping those things off to China, and I think somebody pulled a gun while I was sleeping outside. And there was a whole fight. Yeah, so when I got to Vancouver to line up for that iPhone, I was like number 100 in line, and they handed out cards. And what happened was, for some reason, like, I mean, I guess when I was sleeping or like middle of the night, more people started joining their friends in the line, and I ended up like number 450. And all of a sudden the line unraveled. I don't know what happened, but the police came and sorted things out. I was asleep for most of it, but then I got up and we're like number 450, 500. We got pushed all the way back. There's like camping equipment all over the place that I don't know what happened to. And we ended up having to pay a guy to buy his card to be number 80 in line. And we still didn't get the color that we wanted. And my online order had arrived at my parents' house in Victoria the same day that I had lined up the whole day. So it was just a total stupid idea. But yeah, like the iPhone was like a celebration every time it came out. Samsung used to throw these big events in the New York Music Hall, and it was like a dream to be able to go.